Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd Podcast, Episode 52, in which I interview Jonathan Sims. But first, Transformations and Footnotes, in which I recite verses from my father's book, Transformations, while listening to Ricochet Parts 1 and 2 by Tangerine Dream. And then, afterward, I talk about what I just read. Transformations by John Dan Reeb. Chapter 1, verse 12. You and I get to keep in mind, if we would sustain freedom here and freedom in the elsewheres, that those flesh-place fear junkies who play hide and seek, as we have before and appear to now, do so in a time continuum that can last many lifetimes. You and I know that it is Kali Yuga o'clock. They don't want to look at the cosmos clock. They don't want to look at or remember the agreements. They'd rather bang into them the hard way again and again. We know the agreements are obvious. They would rather not bother with remembering that. A wise one asked the morons, "Why do you keep banging your head against the agreements?" The morons chorused back, "Because it feels so good when we stop." Morons at Kali Yuga o'clock are those who've created forgetting how to stop. 13. Should we, you and I, tell them ever about the rings of fire? Should we, you and I, tell them how to see eggs dancing on the street? Should we, you and I, tell them that the river of death is a wide river between a desert and a forest, and that when one walks through the wall to the other side, one sees the river between the desert and the forest? Why should we bother? They already know. The cycle is complete. And now for the footnotes. This is all pretty self-explanatory. Flesh-place fear junkies, I believe this is the first time he's started using that phrase. He'll use that for the rest of the book. It's very potent. I'll just take a moment to break it down. Flesh-place, that's how he's choosing to designate this place, because physical universe doesn't quite get it, because it's literally the flesh place, the place of flesh, the place from the senses that are derived from the flesh. Flesh place, fear junkies, those who are junkied on fear. Junkies, for example, usually we're thinking of heroin when we think of junkies, but what if you were shooting up fear instead of heroin? Kali Yuga o'clock. It's important to point out that there's a male demon called Kali, not the same as the mother goddess with the very popular destructive aspect named Kali. Same name, different being, completely different being. Kali Yuga. The Yugas are the four different ways that the dice, there was an old game of nuts. You'd throw these nuts or something, and depending on which one was upside down. Well, anyway, they made the ages out of it. Now, these are agreements with a capital A. Now, if you were coming from a Judeo-Christian background, you might say the Elohim at the beginning of Genesis. We, the Elohim, slash those male and female things called the atom that are reflected in the image on the surface of the waters of creation of the Elohim looking at themselves. You know, we have these agreements amongst ourselves. Things like gravity. Eggs dancing on the street. We're talking about people walking around, their auras, different colors. I like the imagery of the river of death. I mean, really, this book is the closest thing that I have to some kind of holy scripture. Our guest tonight entered my life when I pulled my gray Prius C with the Uber trade dress over and picked him up. Somehow we got to talking about podcasts, and before I knew it, we realized we had a lot in common. So let's get to the interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Great.
So, how was your day? You've been at Fox. Can we talk about that, or?
No. Well, okay. So I'm my day is I'm very I'm excited and exhausted. I'm working on a thing that I can't talk about, but it's a big movie with superheroes. It's keeping me busy a lot.
Okay, so that we'll let that hang, and we'll find out about that when it comes out. So now I know that you've got some stuff that you want to get to because it's all hot and happening now, and I just heard the CNET interview, so we will get to that, but I kind of wanted to start at the beginning if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So your mom gave you some Edgar Casey.
Oh yeah. Well, first I just want to say I'm really excited to. I'm really excited to do this. Like I think your podcasts.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad
it's a lot of fun. I've been listening to it. And like these are things I've been into my whole life, but kind of like in a touristy. Like I'm not a learned scholar in this stuff, but it's always really fascinated and inspired me.
Cool.
So it's cool to talk with somebody like you that like you know, this is
kind of went
you're there, you know,
and came back around. Yeah.
So my mom started me out on a path, I guess. Yeah, she had me reading. She had a bunch of Edgar Casey. She was into like Shirley MacLaine. She kind of got that. She was on that New Age kick. You know, we came from a Catholic family.
Okay. So you started out as like church-going Catholic, but with Edgar Cayce.
No,
talking like 5 years old, or
no, not church-going.
Okay.
My mom was against the Catholic Church because of its stance on for feminist reasons. But
right. Yeah.
Fascinated by the Jesuits. The Jesuits had always played a role in my family. In my mom on my mom's side. So she was really metaphysically in tune with like I think kind of the more progressive mystical sides of Catholicism and didn't care for the rest. And I think from there she was, this was the 80s. So she was, into Shirley MacLaine and
probably
Edgar
Sinead
Casey.
O'Connor.
And that was a little bit too edgy. A little bit too edgy. Yeah, it was a fine line.
The Pope up was too much. Yeah.
We were in Arizona, so there was also conservative ideology at work. Right. So it was this weird kind of mix.
She ended up being a priest or priestess, do they say? Probably not. In like a Catholic schism or like we're going to be even more Catholic, like a Irish getting back to the separatist Irish roots.
Good for her.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, it might have been a phase she went through, but it was a rumor I heard anyway. She was doing confessions by phone. People in Ireland could call in. Again,
she was responsible for trying to get Shane McGowan sober off heroin.
Oh yeah,
she busted him, in an act of love to try to get her friend back. I've always had a lot of respect for Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, I was just playing her. She had, I guess it was on SNL. Or maybe, I don't remember if it was SNL or one of the other things she did where she told the truth about the Irish potato famine and about how what it was that the British got all the fish and the beef and, carrots and everything, and the Irish were only allowed to eat potatoes. And like people don't understand what the Irish potato famine was. And so people were, in the media, they were ripping her a new one and saying she didn't even go to college and all this stuff. So there's this video you can find online if you search for Sinead O'Connor potato famine, where she's, holding up the book that she's citing and she's reading from it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so,
I'll look that up.
Posted that in honor of St. Patty's Day, of course, last week or something. But anyhow, we're getting far afield though. So Edgar Casey. Now I've never read Edgar Casey because my dad had, and he told me about it, and I knew enough not to be interested. But I mean,
I haven't since I was maybe 7.
But just for audience members who aren't familiar, since we bring together a lot of things, and there's people, as you know, in South Africa who are listening who might not be familiar with Edgar Casey. That's the guy who was channeling stuff about Atlantis, right?
Yeah, he was channeling a lot of stuff, and I didn't I wasn't so much into the idea of the channeling so much
Yeah,
as the
they
idea
always lose me
of,
with the channeling, but it seems like if you go far enough back, there's always somebody channeling at the beginning of everything.
yeah, like I was just fascinated by the idea of, I think, of of like the mind manifesting or being able to access other people's
Yeah.
thoughts or experiences, and specifically about dreams. He also read about dreams.
Okay.
And that was the book. I remember reading Edgar Casey on dreams and Edgar Casey on ESP, and I remember trying to have ESP very trying really hard as a kid, like to
Yeah, me
like in
too.
a very childlike way,
I
like
know. I'm
really
I'm a
trying, like
cynic born of years of trying. Yeah.
yeah, like really trying to like think like to have ESP the same way you would try to like hit a baseball or like try to do something physical. It's really
Yeah,
silly.
yeah. Or when a light's gonna change or
Yeah, so my mom, right out the gate, I was in tune with all that stuff, and she had crystals, and I thought crystals were really cool. I was into fantasy and science fiction, so like
nice.
all of this stuff was like a part, like this stuff was a part of the fiction and stuff that I was into as a small kid,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the fascination
What were some of your
started.
favorite fictions as a kid?
Um, C.S. Lewis, the
Oh,
Chronicles of
yeah, of
Narnia,
course. And of
the
course, my
whole.
mind goes right to David Bowie standing in front of the wardrobe right before he passed away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, brilliant. Going back into the wardrobe,
Yeah.
with the David Lynch backwards walk. Uh, man, my mom actually had me reading a lot of really great stuff as a kid. I remember not just Lord of the Rings, but like I read the Hobbit. I read the Hobbit at a really young age, and then I
Mhm.
got onto the Silmarillion.
Nice.
All that stuff. H.P.
Yeah.
Lovecraft. Asimov, just like all the basic, I was really into into mythology specifically, really into Greek mythology,
Mhm.
and later really into Norse mythology, um,
Nice.
which it turns out is all Lord of the Rings is. Lord of the Rings basically is just Norse mythology. You take out Sigurd, you take out the Aryan Viking hero, and you replace them with a little English, like Epicurean, basically.
Hmm.
That's like basic Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that the opening scene of Silmarillion seems to I mean, when people ask me about the story of the fall of Lucifer, I find myself telling the Silmarillion. Like he did
Yeah,
it so much better than any religion, you know.
yeah. It's to me. It's like I've never read the Bhagavad Gita. Is that how you
Oh
pronounce it?
yeah, yeah. I've read the specific parts that people point to that you should read.
That's on my
I don't
list
know if
because
I've read the whole thing front
that's
to
some
back.
Lord of the Rings
And the
stuff right there.
Vedas, apparently Bhagavad Gita is like one little that's like the equivalent of the Song of Solomon in the Bible, and there's the Vedas is the whole rest of the book.
Yeah, so Tolkien was, yeah, the Catholic, well, I guess, yeah, he was Catholic, right? And Lewis was Protestant, I believe, right? I believe so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked Tolkien's take on the way he used religion in his world. I kind of favored it over Lewis. I mean, they're doing different things. Lewis is doing like an allegory, and
Yeah.
and Tolkien is using the Catholic cosmology as like a starting point to create his own universe.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Tolkien's feels a little bit well, I guess they both feel pagan, but the lion being the center of everything is kind of, I guess, more Protestant, has a more Protestant feel. There wasn't as much. The only feminine figure was, aside from the protagonist, was the evil figure. So, and then on the other hand, the Tolkien coming from a Catholic background had the pagan influence, kind of that. I don't know. It's an interesting.
It's a little bit more buried I mean, Tolkien stuff it's less literal. It's more.
Yeah.
It's
Where
like there's
Alan
like little.
Moore, on the other hand, no.
Yeah. Did you read any of? Did you get a chance to read Promethea? I thought you'd like that.
I read the part where they go up the tree of life and they dive down and all of that. That was beautiful in the fourth issue.
Yeah, it's really beautiful stuff. I mean, I think when I first read Promethea is when I was like, I really need to like revisit all this stuff that I've always been kind of like interested in and never really
Yeah.
thoroughly thought through. And I thought, I mean, it was so clearly illustrated in that comic book, and beautiful in that comic book series.
Yeah, it seems like it all, yeah, you find all these different puzzle pieces and they don't seem to fit together. But then once it all starts to gel together, you realize they're all, petals of the same rose, if you will.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
all
And
inspired
that's
by the same body of, yeah, and it got the sedimentary layers of history and all of that stuff. Different people studying the same thing. You got different artists studying the same Pamela Coleman Smith art and then doing their own variation on it, and everybody recognizes it because we've all studied it.
yeah.
It's interesting.
It's like I think there's certain kind of thought. I don't want to say viruses, but there's certain thought.
Oh, sure you do. You don't want to say viruses. You like Burroughs. You're a fellow fan of Burroughs.
Yeah, I think there's certain like thought viruses that just really work for
Yeah.
human
Well, yeah, because
culture,
viruses
good or
don't
bad.
necessarily have to be bad. That's kind of a limitation. I mean, what if we can genetically engineer a virus for good? I mean, I guess that's the idea behind starting a new religion, right?
Yeah, they found a virus. They found a virus the size of a grape, an
Ooh.
autonomous virus, an ancient virus. Like if we're talking, you know, dawn
Does
of.
it do virusy things?
Yeah, I mean, I am not a molecular biologist, so but like to what I mean, it all had the same. They have RNA, I think, not DNA.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Oh, like it was technically classified as a, yeah, well, so they need some kind of external something not of their
Yeah,
species, if you can call them a species, like an
I'm
actual.
out of my depth at this point, but the point is, it was a thing that had the same RNA that was the size of a grape,
Uh,
which meant it was all one collective thing. And but I've heard
that's so primally creepy. I
well
mean, having
I've read
mitochondria is such a basic, bare minimum standard of like if I'm gonna like meet someone, I want to know that they too have mitochondrial DNA, like
yeah, well, DNA is cool too because
like a
DNA like
tree or everything except for
that
viruses,
that gets yeah, well, they're like alien. Well, that gets back to Dune, like that the whole idea of collective Herbert talking about
Yeah.
awakening, taking the water of life and awakening all your past
Oh yeah,
lives.
and then the water of life as ayahuasca, putting together
Well,
cosmic serpent and all of that
but
stuff.
I mean, I think that's just a metaphor for like adaptive traits and adaptive qualities, like that
Yeah.
we like our genetic heritage is our behavior and it is our anatomy, and so in a certain way we are an expression of this mountain of you know
Experience.
of experience. Absolutely,
Millions
just on
of years of experience dealing with this universe and this
yeah,
particular
and you don't even have
corner.
to go into the whole super esoteric stuff to
I know. I love how like
feel.
Neil deGrasse Tyson gets spiritual when he talks about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I love him, and I
Yeah,
love again. They're my they've given me a lot of inspiration and hope
like
and comfort just with their out.
sometimes you feel the Holy Spirit moving through an atheist more than a religious person.
That's I mean, I would consider myself an atheist, but like a good one. Like I don't like get mad at people for having religions unless they hurt
Right.
people with them. Like I don't like you're stupid. I'm like, well, that's not for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I move the goalpost, I mean, like usually an atheist, religious people tend to think of atheists as people who hate religious people or something, or
Yeah.
or who think they're wrong because they believe in God. But I mean, my mom kind of raised me thinking whatever you believe is true. So if you're about to die and you're like, uh-oh, here comes the great throne of judgment, then guess what? There it is.
Just
But
you just created it.
yeah, but if you're like, okay, now I'm going to go into the bardo and wait for a while and be reincarnated, then you do. And,
Yeah.
and if you do the Buddhist path just right, I guess, then you can break out of that. Or I don't know, I don't know how far it goes. But I think that, it was by then I was having conversations in words, and so I had lost my innate understanding that I was, pushing away with layers upon layers of consideration of different possibilities. But I guess that's part of the game of life is to get so confused that you're like, whoa, am I mortal or not? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it would be agnostic. I guess people say agnostic, but isn't it
Yeah.
agnostic? Because
Well, it's
gnosis is
acknowledging that you
not.
don't know. Socrates was agnostic. He started out by
Yeah.
saying he didn't know.
Who maybe you know this guy. There was a philosopher, an anonymous philosopher that was he went by the
Like
name, I think
capital A
posthumously as
anonymous?
No, no, we'll
Oh,
get
oh,
there. By Pseudo Dionysus. You know
oh.
him?
Yeah, yeah. It sounds familiar.
His whole thing was, God is unknowable,
Right.
which I think is part of Golden Dawn Thelema, right? Like the ultimate God is unknowable.
Yeah, I'd
There's
say
an
so.
aspect of God
Well,
that's completely unknowable.
knowledge is in Da'at, and if you get beyond the abyss, then you've passed the realm of the knowable up into Binah. And basically, it's thought that while you're incarnate, while you're in an operating, while you're an operating Thetan, if you will, uh, then
That's one of those thought viruses we were talking about.
I know, I'm
Work.
spreading them
It
on my
works. I find
podcast.
myself I find myself saying Scientology stuff.
It's
Like
okay. It's working its
like
way into the mainstream like Christian
that's how
shit
you
did.
but,
I
but,
mean, the
but
whole English language, if you look at the beginning of it, the first thing written down with Latin letters in an English tongue was, if you rip off the church, then you pay for it 12-fold. And
no way. I didn't
it
know
was
that. That makes
while
perfect
St. Augustine was
it
standing
makes
there watching
perfect
the
sense.
King of Kent.
So language there you go. Language is politics.
Yeah, and religion.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever you look in Russia, they invented the language in order to translate the Greek version of the Bible into something. And then at the same time, they created Russian culture and language and art and everything.
Yeah. I
Trip.
speak some Russian really terribly.
Я говорю русский.
I yeah, я знаю мало слов немного.
That's actually all I can say. Is I can get
Yeah, that's
myself
all I
in
can say
trouble.
too. I can say some other stuff. I can say bad.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, my dad taught me to say "Я не говорю по-русски" when someone came up to me on the street and I didn't want to talk to them. He's
I
like,
went to Italy during the Bush years, and I was horrified of being an
Junior.
American,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I pretended to be Russian when
Yeah,
I was.
yeah, nice. Yeah, my one of my mentors was a beatnik back in the days when there were beatniks, and after that he was in North Africa in Tangiers. His name was Gordon for people who are longtime listeners. You'll know who I'm talking about. But anyway, they thought he was German, so they'd say Alemania, and he'd say yeah, or he'd say yeah, but it sounded
Yeah,
close enough to yeah. They left him alone.
yeah. They figured he just didn't have much to say.
Yeah, yeah. So these
Man, a
like
few.
French-speaking Arabs were okay with him as long as he was German.
Yeah,
It's funny. So okay, so your mom freaked out when you got into tarot and Wicca. But that was
yeah.
a natural progression from the stuff
Right.
your
Yeah.
dad was into.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. Totally.
Her
It was a
leash
thing
was
where like,
shorter than yours. That happened
what's
to me
that?
too. My mom was progressive, but she still had a leash. But my leash
Yeah.
was
So
longer.
this is in like Arizona, during the 80s and like
Right,
the 90s, basically
right,
the
right.
90s at this point.
When it was
And
unanimously Reagan. Yeah, oh, 90s. It was yeah.
yeah,
Everybody
and so,
complaining about
and so,
Clinton.
so she's like, well, it's really cool that my son is into like like crystals and Edgar Casey until he starts
Got to draw the line
doing,
somewhere. Yeah.
doing others, yeah, doing other, doing the whole, when she saw the pentacles and stuff, and she freaked out. And I was just a little spooky kid. I was like a little, I saw the craft. I started to read. It
Oh,
was
I
one of those
almost met
things,
Firuza Balk. I did Golden Dawn ceremony in front of Firuza Balk, but hopefully
and
it was an inappropriate time to meet her because everybody was mourning. But next time I'm going to say hi. Anyway, go on.
yeah, I started getting into Wicca. I didn't really understand that Wicca was kind of like a bit of an artifice. Like it really wasn't his story. It was a thing referencing other older things. I didn't really understand that at the time because I
Right.
was a kid. Um, and my mom was really, really horrified about that, and some other, and I came out as bisexual, and she was, she just was like, I didn't like, what have I done? Thinking so they sent me to this Jesuit preparatory that my grandfather had gone to, and it
Hmm.
had been in the family forever. Kind of straightened me out,
Was that in
I
Arizona?
think. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I did the opposite because now I'm talking to Jesuits, and we're talking about Native American mysticism and
Nice.
Buddhism, and like I'm going to sweat lodges with Jesuits, and like you know and yeah, it was actually it was it was a weird experience. Those were weird years for me.
Yeah.
I met a high priestess in a Wicca priestess who it was just broke every like stereotype of what you think a Wicca priestess would be in the 90s. You'd imagine like Verusa Balk. This was a woman she used to be like a park ranger, or I think she was like a survivalist. She knew, all this stuff about, like astrophysics and the stars and botany, and like truly, this was a one of a kind. And she was kind of like a guide for me. And, I was like, at this point I was like 19, she was like 40.
Nice.
Um, and, yeah, she turned me on to a lot of mystical stuff,
Now,
psychedelic
you
stuff.
mentioned there was some negative aspect to the Jesuit school.
Yeah, it was a weird time for that institution where they were trying to grow, and I think they were using it was a selective school. It was an expensive school, and I
Right.
think they were using its reputation as like a selling point and trying to expand it, and I think kind of, in my opinion, lost the path. I
I
think
see.
in that it was I
Sold
think it
out of
was
it.
the lay people that were involved that were, I think, subverting and I think doing some really unethical, really bad things.
Hmm.
I actually left me with a lot of anger that I carried with me for a long time. And I one of the priests that I knew from high school, I still talk. I'm actually we're having dinner with him, I think next week.
Nice.
I got him to conduct a ceremony for my sister, who is Catholic.
Hmm.
Um, Her husband is an atheist, but she got married in this chapel at my old school by my old priest. He was really cool to me. And as we're talking about this, I'm done being angry about this, and I'm like, while I got you here, I just, there's something I have a lot of anger about this, and you're a Catholic, you're a Jesuit, who better to ask how to forgive, how do you do this? And I hadn't actually talked to a Jesuit in a while, and he responded with the Buddhist parable about about the two monks, and a woman asked for help fording a river, and it's a huge hassle for one of them because he's injured, and the other one gripes about wasn't it selfish of her to ask this of us? Can't she tell we're holy men? And he's griping about it, and he's like, I carried her across the river. You've been carrying her this whole time.
Right. I heard a slightly different version of that one. It was that there were the two monks, and in their version of Buddhism, it was, they had taken extreme vows of celibacy, so they weren't allowed to interact with women or touch them, especially. And so there was a woman who was having trouble getting across the river, and one of them said, "Here, I'll carry you across the river." So the other monk was appalled. Probably the younger monk was appalled, and he was the student. And then as they walked, after he was done carrying her, they walked another mile, and then the younger monk finally said, "Can I ask you something?" And then, of course, he said, "Why did you carry her across the river?" And the older monk says, "Why are you still carrying her?"
Yep, that was it. You got it.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the story.
So yeah, well, yeah, and that's probably I'm getting a little bit of that because of the stories that I'm laying out on the line, which for some people, for like 30 or 40 people, are very therapeutic. For thousands of people, are interesting and new, and they've never heard it before. And for like 5 people, are really painful to hear because they're still too close to it. And so I'm getting a little bit of flack, people saying, you're kind of reopening old wounds. And I'm like, shit, I'm sorry. And then I'm like, am I doing it for ratings? No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not. I'm not selling anything. I'm doing it for, my own therapy and the therapy of others. But, yeah, I'm carrying it until I stop. And, talking about it is part of letting it go. And also, I've been meaning to write it all down, and this is a way that I can do that figuratively. But anyhow,
Yeah,
enough about
I
me.
mean, I think it's important to make
Yeah,
to make what you do some kind of therapy. So you're
yeah,
getting something from, so you're creating something for an audience, for people, but like you're also getting something,
out of it.
yeah, something, I
Yeah.
don't want to say spiritual, but you're growing from it, which then lets you make, other
Mark Maron,
things.
whose house I can see from my window right now, in the early years, he was, or at least according to him. I haven't really listened to the early years of his podcast, but I guess it was mostly therapeutic. But then he finally came around to being able to focus on the guest. Rather than just be like,
Yeah,
"Come on here and listen to me talk about my marriage."
his whole journey is also really inspiring.
Yeah.
that
Oh, and you're in the same town. We're all in the same town, and Maria
yeah,
Bamford's over there, and the people who made
Bamford, yeah.
Simpsons are over there, and the people who made Avatar: Last Airbender are over there, and yeah, they're all over here.
I've played I don't know if you know Jackie Case is her one of her best friends, she's also a comedian.
Nice.
We play board games with her and her friends sometimes, and have the wonderfully nerdy conversations about comic books and science
Nice.
fiction, and like her friends, I'm just completely outclassed. I like to think there are those people where, like, you think you know something, and then you start talking to them and you're like, I just did
Yeah.
this so much.
I know. That's the thing with podcasting though is, if anybody actually listens to it, you get the people who know more about what you're talking about than you do, and it's not the same as being at a party of 7 people who don't know anything at all about what you're talking about, and you're a little drunk and no one else has anything to talk about, and you can rule.
Yeah, you can just, yeah.
I'm ruling this subject right now.
Right. Yeah, I've listened to some of the people you've had on have been,
Very
they've
knowledgeable.
really, yeah, they've been around. They've
Yeah.
been around the cosmos, and come back, and you can just hear it when you're talking to somebody that just like I think there's a way of living life, so you're just extracting so much meaning from everything you're encountering.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you have any favorite episodes that come to mind?
I mean, the stuff about Chardon was cool
Oh, cool.
because
Yeah, yeah.
actually, my grandfather, I inherited a bunch of his books, and he had a bunch of Chardon, and I'm actually looking at it right now.
Nice.
But yeah, the Jesuit one, the Bowie one was cool. I listened to
Mhm.
the Temple, and the two you told me, the
Oh, yeah,
Yasod
yeah.
and Temple.
35 and 45. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's fun stuff. Yeah, it's
Cool.
fun stuff.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. So, okay, what happened after Jesuit high school?
What happened after Jesuit? I went to film school.
Hmm.
Well, no, I didn't. I kind of dropped out. I didn't want to go to school.
Hmm.
I dropped out,
Understandable.
and I lived in a ghetto in Tucson with a friend of mine who dropped out of Harvard,
Hmm.
and we lived in like what looked like a crack house, just writing and being bohemians for a
Nice.
year. And then we're like, yeah, we should probably
The
go back to
Fight
school.
Club year.
Yeah, it was, yeah, that was.
I am
So then
Jack's.
I went to film school, and
Mhm.
it was good, but I was like, how am I gonna make a living doing this? I'm in Hollywood, and super competitive, and my angle was, I started doing visual effects on
Mhm.
all my friend student films, and then I by the time I graduated, I had a reel, and I was getting work as a VFX artist on big movies, actually,
Nice.
and
Are there any you
making.
can name on the air?
Yeah, well, I was doing really low level stuff on Pirates of the Caribbean 2, I think, and then Apocalypto, and I mean, my IMDb is like super long. It's like
Okay.
I've worked, I've done like Hunger Games and Terminator
Oh, nice.
Genesis,
I was
and
in the background in the last Hunger Games that I still haven't seen.
yeah, where were you?
In Capital City. I was a Capital
Cool,
City pedestrian. There
nice,
were a bunch of other
nice.
white people, and so I'm the one with curly blonde hair, and they had me change clothes a bunch of times and walk in a bunch of different ways. So if you watch the end, apparently, when everything's on fire, if you see anyone running around in the distance who's a male with curly blonde hair, it's me.
You've been multiplied into.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was doing the multiplying, not on that
Nice.
show, but like
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff
Right, right.
that
Yeah.
that
Cool.
um and I was making a lot of money. I mean, for a early 20 something, kid,
Mhm.
and it was kind of dangerous. It was kind of like that part of the Odyssey where they go to the what was it, the Lotus Eaters,
I
you
wish I
know.
could say I'd read it.
So like, okay, so they go to this island, everything's great, and they
Mhm.
just stay there for too long. They forget why they're on the Odyssey. They forget they're trying to get
I
back to.
think that's where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, I found financial success limit. I mean, I didn't have that bohemian period after film
Yeah.
school, but I was being creative. I was like this technical artist, and I had all these like ideas and stories burning in me, and but I was also bringing home a great paycheck. So for a good 5 or 6 years, I was like, yeah, I'll start directing later. I'll start writing later. I'm working on really big movies. Um, and just kind of placated by the fact that I didn't have to worry about money. And all my friends that were like, writing, like spec scripts and, trying to produce stuff, they were all just in the thick of it financially. And I was like, I'm fine. But I wasn't working on my stuff. I
Right.
wasn't nurturing my voice. Because I didn't have that empty bank account gun to my head.
Yeah.
So the VFX was it was a double-edged sword. And I've been kind of hard on myself for going that route. But now things are coming together for me, and I'm kind of viewing those years as differently.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with where things are going, and I don't think I'd do anything differently. Because like when it happens for me, and it's gonna like I'm gonna be making stuff that's me. It's
Yeah.
my like it's just me, and if
Well, I
someone
can visualize stuff, but I can't put it on the screen. I don't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to mention my best buddy Chris. His parents made him do music lessons, piano lessons every day, an hour a day, and then he hated it, all along until one day he could pick up any instrument and play it, and then he plays music and writes, songs, and it's great.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how like it's so much stuff is happening just in this past week. Like it's the kind of stuff that makes you want to make a skeptic like me want to believe in these, esoteric systems of determination. You know what I mean? Like there's just been so much stuff happening for me, and it's been such a weird, rough, empty a year full of no work, and now all these projects I've been doing are like they're taking off and people are talking about them, and like it's just crazy how fast it can change,
Nice.
which I guess is what's blows my mind. Like, and now I don't have I'm letting go of my regrets and anger about the chances I took and the way I decided to play this game and whatever, and I just am excited to make stuff, so I feel really good. So
Excellent. So
yeah.
I'm of course, I was selling you in the previous episode as being the guy who made the one with the Guy Fawkes Max Headroom bouncing
Yeah,
around.
that was
I love
yeah.
that. I love the music. I love the words. I'm like, yeah.
So that was, I mean, so that happened when I was working, I think on oh God, no, I was working on some bullshit. I think I was like working on like my big fat Greek. I was doing some terrible, like, oh, something just awful. And I'm sitting at this fucking cubicle. I'm just like, what? Why am I doing this? Like, well, how did this happen? Like, what? And, I'd been around the internet. I'd been a somewhat professional troll most of my adult life on LiveJournal. Like we were destroying threads on LiveJournal when I was a teenager. We
Right.
would go on. We had this little team. The years before Anonymous, we had this little team of internet gremlins. We would like go and we would find people on LiveJournal and just destroy their threads with
Oh
like
my God.
hundreds of comments from all these sock puppet accounts that were like we were called the fathers, and we would like we'd like
Nice.
quote like Immanuel Kant, like just like huge text blocks of Immanuel Kant interspersed with like car accident photos, like just like horrible surreal Dadaist like, and so I mean I'd been familiar with internet pranksterism for all my life basically, and then
Yeah.
I heard that 4chan was and somethingawful.com were thinking about taking down Scientology because of the Tom Cruise thing.
Hmm.
And one of my friends was like, "Yeah, we're going to be protesting." I'm like, "You're gonna what?" I'm like, "You're gonna like
Now,
4chan?"
just real quick, at that time, the Tom Cruise thing, 2008,
I think yeah,
was he
2000.
jumping on couches at that time, or what was
No, that
his?
was somebody leaked one of the uh just one of the internal propaganda videos of
The video
him
you used at the
being called
beginning?
Tone 40.
Oh,
No, I used that video because we released on 9/11 and we were trying to
oh, right, right, right. To be on point. But sorry, I cut you off.
show
Yeah,
how they were just to show how they were commercializing 9/11 to
yeah.
take money from their brainwashed. Yeah, no, it
But
was the video
the Tom
Tom
Cruise.
Cruise of Tom Cruise going crazy, and then they threatened YouTube, and YouTube took it down.
Oh, yeah. And so when he was going crazy, you said about Tone 40.
Yeah, he was just like talking about he just was going crazy. He was like he was just
Was
being
that the one
manic.
about? He was talking about medicine, how Brooke Shields
He,
shouldn't be taking
yeah,
medicine or something.
he was tackling like really just he's just like manic, and people were
Wow. Now I want to go find this. Oh,
yeah, that
and
was
did you use clips from that also with the
that
Max
yeah, there
Headroom?
that was intercut in
Okay,
rerun.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so that video, I mean, so I'm my friend went to I heard that they were, anonymous at that point, was going to be going into like a physical protest, on the street. And
Hmm.
I was like, no way. No, there's no, that's not going to happen. Don't believe it. And then I saw the pictures of it and I was like I realized that this was the beginning of a new era of everything. Like
Yeah,
this the beginning of this was going to change the
it's
way
a game changer.
people interface with power structures for the rest of the internet.
Forever.
And I instantly saw what a big deal this was.
Yeah.
And I mean, coincidentally, Scientology, they're kind of jerks, but it really wasn't about Scientology.
Right.
I you know
Like you said, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Totally. Yeah, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. They just happened to be like they're cartoonishly evil.
Right at the
They were
time where all these
psychologically
hackers were starting to
anachronistic.
get organized and anonymous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's more. I think it really was more of like a generation of kids that had all this like all these skills, all these ideas, all this energy that they were spending masturbating and playing Warcraft
Yeah.
and like and not and like shit posting and like trolling LiveJournal and trolling Habbo Hotel and like just being doing what kids do.
Yeah.
And then but so this is also I think of this, yeah, this is before Obama, this is also during the Bush years. So there's all this like the body politic is so there's this
Corrupt.
like there's this thermal undercurrent of just like frustration that like we're in this war that doesn't make any sense. And like I think there was just a lot of angst that was undirected and potential energy in I think my generation around that time.
Yeah.
And then Scientology just picked the wrong fight and it all just clicked into place. Like and it was just like it was incredible. It was like a dominoes.
Mm.
Someone, they just knocked down a domino and it was a ripple effect.
I've
And
been working on a sci-fi comic book series or sci-fi novel since about 1999, and it's in the future in an alternate timeline, but it traces back the underground or the reason why there's any free people at all that that aren't jacked into this horrible, hideous empire machine. The reason why there's any freedom at all is because of the hackers that came together and united in secret in the 1990s. And so I supposed that that existed on, that was out there, and I heard rumors that that was kind of true-ish, and I kind of felt like it was inevitable, like it was that was going to coalesce, and there was going to be, you know, a certain power that couldn't be sold out. It couldn't be corrupted or co-opted
yeah,
because it's
um,
just based on purity, just the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth, the scales of
but
balance themselves.
so now the game has changed so much. Like, I
Since
mean,
then,
it's been just fractured into a million like that.
yeah, that seems inevitable too.
It is inevitable. I mean,
Yeah,
what creeps me out is seeing ISIS using the same social media strategies that I was using 6 years ago. Literally,
yeah,
literally, it's so weird seeing ISIS do the stuff Anonymous was doing.
yeah,
That's like chilling. And
yeah.
but and it's but it's the same.
Yet
It's just
inevitable.
it's the same idea. Um, and it's just forever. It's
Well,
just
they learned it
that
from watching you guys.
that can't ever happen again. I mean, like
Yeah.
what happened with Scientology
Oh, I see.
and then the Arab Spring.
Time and
It
place.
at
They're
that point
inoculated now.
there well it's not that they're inoculated. It's that I think that once I think like the internet as a collective organism, the internet subculture as a collective organism became self-aware. It lashed out to the closest thing to it and then realized instantly that it hated itself and fractured into like, you know, I mean, lulsec, the people that took, that took on
They're just in it for the lulz.
well, there's lots of different, but like I mean, like the people that we were doing stuff with against Scientology years later are hacking, Sony like
Hmm.
last year, like,
Right.
and so I mean that idea of like there being a collective. I mean, Anonymous now. The
Yeah.
reason why I'm talking, the reason why I'm talking about this now is because I'm not a part of it. It's changed so much since I did stuff that I'm not betraying any. I'm not even aware of where stuff is planned now. Like I'm not a part of any of. I'm not on any of those channels.
Right.
So back then it was really localized. There were a few places where it was a big community. Now it's a bunch of just renegade security crews to
Hmm.
go around and do their own thing, which is, that's just what happened. And I got out of the game. I had a lot of fun. I the crew that I was in, we came away scot free. Like we got away with so much. Nothing. We actually didn't do anything illegal. We were really good at getting other people to get excited about ideas, and then they would do it and take credit and take credit for it, which was great because we
Yeah.
didn't want credit, we didn't want heat. If other people wanted to kind of follow what we were doing and push it, that was their choice, and we weren't doing it for that. It's been
Right.
what, like 6 years, 7 years since I did this, and I haven't talked about it. I mean, a lot of other people, gave interviews. We did a few interviews, but we always used different pseudonyms. We would use pseudonyms from other groups to like troll them, to piss them off. So if we did an interview with the LA Weekly, we would say, "Oh, we're from this
Right. Right.
group," but we're not. We're just using their names, and then we spout our ideology.
So, did you have the sledgehammer or the fire extinguisher?
Oh, I was a sledgehammer.
Nice. I thought so.
Yeah, I was a sledgehammer. So that, I mean, that was, yeah, that was a turning point for me. Like that was so much fun. I met so many fun people. Um, I recommend that if at all possible, kids get involved in social engineering or hacktivism about whatever their politics happen to be. I mean, I think what excited me about Anonymous was like the idea that there are all these people that didn't have any, that felt like they were not going anywhere, that felt like they weren't in charge of the world around them, and they could like take up this idea and do whatever the hell they wanted with it,
Yeah.
whatever it was. I was fine with people doing terrible things because I knew that that there would be people that would want to fight that, and I just wanted to mix things up, and that's what
Hmm.
you do when you're young,
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate with that. So, after the work with Anonymous, you said that got you noticed. Was that immediately or 6 years later?
Oh, so it's funny. Like I'm still in touch with my little team. We're all out of it now, and well, for a long time, and we're all successful in what we're doing, which is kind of cool.
Hmm.
Um, and I met these people through doing this, and for years I didn't know what their names were, and I didn't know what kind of lives they led. We just connected about this one thing and collaborated really well together. And
Nice.
I think the point I got out was, I remember the moment was, I made these videos that were successful, and a friend of mine was an influential member, and he had a particular way of dressing that wasn't the Guy Fawkes mask, and he'd been followed by Scientology, and he's been harassed, and so he had this other guy would dress up like him as a decoy, like, and so he's like, "Hey, I want to show you something," and we went to this protest, and it was a guy dressed like him holding up a TV playing my video, and
Nice.
we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, "Yeah, I'm good." Anyway, my name's Jonathan. He's like, and he told me his name. I'm like, "Nice to meet you." And we just fucking walked away, and we're like, "That was it." We're like, "It's out of our hands. They can do with it whatever they want." Like, you know,
Nice.
and
Huh.
and yeah, it was like, it was kind of a wake up call for me because, I'd spent, years doing VFX work that wasn't like satisfying to me in like a creative way.
Now, did you want to mention, you had told me a story about when you didn't realize you were using tech when you were wearing a Guy Fawkes mask?
Oh yeah, so to do all this stuff, we all like learned because they leaked like the HCOB, they leaked like everything, and we just were voraciously reading all this Scientology
Hmm.
material because it's fucking weird
Yeah.
and um, and fascinating. And
Now,
so we
HCOB, what does that stand for?
I don't remember it's one of the manuals. It's one of the manuals about like were you ever an ashtray flunk? It's like it's one of the it's one of the
Here, I'll look online. The Hubbard Communications Office Bulletin.
right.
Interesting.
Anyway, so we all figured out how to talk like them,
Yeah.
and we were. I mean, I don't know. Like to be clear, like I where I fell on the whole moral scale of Anonymous, I was pretty like chaotic good. Like
Hmm.
I had sympathy for the ex-Scientologists. I wanted to foster this like sense of I was human rights, free speech are things that are important to me, and those were
Yeah.
ideas that I was pursuing.
Me
But I also
too. Yeah.
understood that like chaos was fun and sexy and got us press, and um, so I just want to make clear that I'm not like laughing at all Scientologists. I understand that there's a lot of it's a totally complicated
It's a
thing.
layered and complex
Yeah.
issue. Yeah, especially if
Yes.
you're born into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just want to be clear. I'm not like, so yeah, we were, there's a video. So this is, I get off like somewhere in some like Scientology, like headquarters, they were watching me. Like they, there was this crew, this documentary crew that were very talkative and they came up to us and they were like, "We're making a documentary about Anonymous, and we have all these questions." And we're like, "Yeah, this is what we're about. We know how to get press. We know how to look good. We know how to run this. Sure, talk to us. We've been getting ready for this." So, I go get some guy. I basically set up a shot, and we're talking, and she's asking me things like, it's typical things. And she's asking me things like, well, on 4chan, there's, sometimes people post like child pornography. Do you believe in child porn? I'm like, no, of course not. I'm not responsible for what other people post. I'm only responsible for my actions. I mean, well, does Anonymous believe? I go, what? You're talking to me. You're talking to one person. I can give you my thoughts, my beliefs. If you want to know what this person says, ask them. Like,
Right.
we're not an organization. Scientology is. So understand that. Like,
Yeah.
we're not here to like talk about what we believe in. We're here to talk about forced labor
Yeah.
camp.
There's no
So
Nicene Creed for Anonymous. Yeah.
like we're engaging them, and then on a rhetorical level, and then so the more and more she keeps saying the word source. She's like, well, what's your source for that? And what's your and there was another like kind of low level buzzword. It was source and like I don't remember, it's years ago, but like
Hmm.
yeah, I was getting the vibe like the she was using source and she was using there's one other term she was using, and I was like turning to like the kids next to me who I didn't fucking know. Like this was so for like a kid in his like early 20s, like this is like it's totally sexy and like spy stuff.
Hmm.
Like it's like I don't know who this person is. We have code names. It's like the stakes are low because we're taking on this like kind of goofy organization, and I'm like, it sounds like she's a Scientologist. Like, I think she's cool, but I think she keeps on saying stuff like tech and like source. And I just like look at her, like I make eye contact, and I'm like, are you a Scientologist? And she like totally can't, she can't do it. She can't lie about that. And I can
Yeah.
instantly see it. And she's like, well, we're talking about, and she like changed. I'm like, you're a Scientologist, aren't you? And it's like, she couldn't lie about it. And I just like looked at her in her eyes and I'm like, if you're a Scientologist, I want you to know that I don't hate you. We don't hate you. Like, and it completely like just like they had a plan for this encounter. And at that point, that plan was no longer like on the board.
Right.
You could just see the whole dynamic
Yeah, they were playing war,
change.
and you changed the name of the game. Yeah.
yeah, and at that point and around that time, like, you know, at that point she started asking me, "Oh, are you an ex-Scientologist? Were you in?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I've never been a Scientologist. I don't." And so in her mind, it's like she's thinking he's lying. That's why he's wearing a mask. He's lying. He's an ex-Scientologist. And
Right.
so, you know,
And
and
that's probably what they're telling the Scientologists about what's going on with Anonymous. It's like, oh,
exactly
don't pay attention to
this
these.
poor
They have
woman
an axe
who,
to grind.
yeah, and this poor woman probably had to go, you know, pay a bunch of money for a sex check, or, you know, figure out what pulled that in, or, you know, and like, I mean, that's what's sad about it, is like, you know, it's easy to make fun of Scientology because, you know, they've done some terrible things and they're kind of backwards, and not until recently they were super anachronistic technologically. But you know, these people are ruined financially, emotionally by this organization.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, I think what ended up happening was I think the good that came out of Anonymous and Scientology was letting the ex-Scientologists know that it's safe to fight back. You
Yeah.
don't. Paul Haggis can write his novel. You know, like, it's totally safe. If a bunch of kids can piss all over these people and get away with it, people that have had their, you know, families taken away can really do something now.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. Yeah, I just didn't. It was just, I was over it. I was like, this isn't personal for me. It's personal for some people, and now these people can do what they need to do to make it right for them. So
Here,
yeah, that
here.
was my anonymous thing.
Well
There was a lot
done.
of party. Honestly, there was a lot of drugs and sex also in partying.
Of course.
It was.
One would
I'm gonna
expect
write a
that.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write a cool story about what happened to me in anonymous, and it's gonna be great. Well, yeah. So Mr. Robot heavily heavily borrows, I think, from the anonymous style of, you know, the rhetoric and the propaganda, which I was kind of, I had a part in doing.
Mm.
And like, and so, and Mr. Robot's a great show. I love it. And so my friend who was also an anonymous is now, she's in the biz as well.
Mhm.
She knows the showrunner and knows his agent, and you know, went to him and was like, "Have you seen this video?" And the dude was like, "Oh my God, that's from our show." And she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Who made that?" He's like, "Well, one of my friends. He's a director. You should meet him." And so that that was how I started taking meetings at agencies, was just off that, which is
Wow.
funny.
You know, I just thought I'd throw this out there because it occurred to me when I went to sign up at I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll get back to what you're saying.
It's okay.
But over in Burbank, the what is it? The thing that the background performers all sign up for? Casting,
I don't
casting
know.
services,
Is it
casting crew, central casting.
okay?
You have to sit in line for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and then they take the first 25 people in line, and everybody else has to go home and come back, you know, next week. And you know, just to get people used to being treated like cattle right from the get-go, because anybody who has any dignity will never come back, and then they'll never be a background performer. So, meanwhile, while you're waiting, the Scientologists come and hand out little pamphlets. So I just thought it might be fun, just planting little seeds out there if somebody came around and handed out little anonymous pamphlets. Yeah.
Well, that's
Anyway.
exactly the kind of stuff. Like, that's exactly the kind of stuff that was happening in 2008.
Yeah,
And
yeah, cool, cool.
I think the important, so like, I think, you know, and then the Arab Spring happened, and
Right.
which
So how did
was,
it transition from our local cult here in Hollywood to the opposite side of the world all of a sudden?
yeah, anonymous DDoS the uh the the Department of Defense, a Department of Defense website that the Ayatollah's government or regime was running to report your neighbor for protesting.
Right.
And
The whole 1984 thing.
that was the last thing I was tangentially involved in with Anonymous, was Project Greenwave.
Nice. And you
And
made
I
a
was
video
out.
to let Iran know that what was happening?
Now I mean, I did other things.
Oh, okay. Don't want to make this a confession.
uh, but yeah, whatever. That wasn't my thing. I just was like, it was a cool thing, so I wanted to be part. Whatever. Um, but you know, and then and now it's, you know, the stuff that we were doing is, I think, common. You know, it's common. It's just how, you know, it's just changed. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really happy to be a part of it. I had so much fun, and it kind of woke me up creatively with, it was like, hey, I want to be doing stuff. I don't want to be stuck in a cubicle
Yeah.
doing stuff that I'm doing.
So fast
So
forwarding to now, there's something about deep dream and virtual reality, and I heard
yeah,
part of the CNET
I'm
interview.
releasing a. So I'm really excited about virtual reality. And I'm gonna be releasing a Google Deep Dream, the first cinematic Google Deep Dream virtual reality experience on Monday.
Nice.
I did an interview on CNET about it, and it's called Dreamtime. And you're inside of a dream. You're inside of a dream that I had, that
Nice.
it's populated by a dream that a computer had through the Google Deep Dream learned neural network thing, which to people that aren't familiar with that, this is super complicated, and I'm going to give an explanation that I only sort of understand.
Okay.
So essentially, there's Google researches image recognition and machine learning to aid in image searches and understand like
Right.
so they
So
make what's called.
similar. That's why like visually similar images. So you upload a picture of a cat, and it says this couch looks a little like your cat.
Yeah, recognize faces, and
Oh, right. Yeah. Do you want to tag your friend so and so? And it's the first time that picture's ever been online. You're like, how did you know?
yeah, so there's a whole body of research and work that lets us do things like that on the internet. And so somebody asked the question, what happens if we go the other way, and we feed it noise and ask it what it sees, and we ask it to draw what it sees, render what it sees. And we
Yeah.
get these incredible psychedelic experiences that are the product of a neural network. It's an artificial intelligence neural network that learns,
The
modeled after.
trippy thing about that, though, is, I mean, if you imagine, I mean, I'm going to get a little fruity, a little far out, and I don't say fruity as
Yeah,
anything but just kind of like new agey.
yeah, I
Um,
gotcha.
like, if there's something there that's so subtle you can't see it, and the mind kind of like gets rid of it because it's some freaky alien ghost thing with a big eye, for instance, um, then it stands to reason that if you take a photograph and do something like what you're describing, like, do you see anything there? Do you see an eye? Do you see a face? It'll just pull the ghost's face right into the foreground where you can see it. So, I mean, like, if you're a little bit paranoid and schizophrenic, then Google Deep Dream is kind of terrifying because suddenly it's opened all the portals to all the demonic realms that are constantly around us.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other
that's, a,
thing
that's a
I could
direction
talk about.
some people can go, and there's a few stoned people listening to this right now going,
Well,
"Oh fuck!"
the internet is itself like a resonance chamber for like basically the Chardon's noosphere.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
but it's like this, but it's recursive. Like Chardon, I think, thought about like the noosphere as like in almost like this. Oh God, what's the term?
Like a big library,
Um,
Alexandrian library, that
yeah,
we
as
all
like
share
this
in common.
institution. It's like, yeah, it's this constant instead of it's this like it's like instead what we have is this
Yep.
basically the id of humanity in looking at itself in a funhouse mirror
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And um and that's, I mean, kind of what deep dream is it's recursive. It's asking, so okay, you sort of saw an eye, now what do you see? You
Hmm.
see more of an eye now you see now, oh, now you see an eye in the eye, and now you see, and so it's this recursive loop of like, um anyway,
Yeah.
about schizophrenics and that, because basically we're talking about assembling meaning from nothing, from chaos, looking
Right.
at chaos and making it,
It's
which is
where
what dreams are. I mean, which is what dreams are, is this chaos of um stimulus that we've experienced throughout the day in our lives, that our brain is kind of the tides of our consciousness are kind of kicking up, And, part of our brain's like, oh, we have to assemble these stars into a constellation and make a story out
Yeah.
of it.
And when we're
Yeah.
little, we have to train ourselves not to see monstrous faces in the dark because you just do. I mean, the
Yeah.
mind puts them there because you're looking at little
That's what we do.
floaties and different
That's
little
what we
things.
do. That's what
Yeah.
our brain is there for, is to create these realities that we can experience and share with each other.
Yeah.
The internet then becomes this interesting. There's a whole thing that fascinates me, called gang stalking, on which is, people with, uh, clinical conditions that are paranoid, that believe that they're being followed by who knows, followed by people. They count how many red cars they see and they think they're being followed. So now on YouTube, these people can find each other and validate their own delusions.
Wow.
And there's whole communities emerging of people that are convinced they're either paranoid schizophrenics or delusional, that are, filming where the thought control rays come in, and then people are then validating that they also see them, because they're sharing a similar delusion, and then they'll post, videos of, how come I've seen four Ford Tauruses today. That can't be a coincidence. And so, I mean, to a psychologist, or from a clinical perspective, I'd love to talk to somebody, in the psychological school, that could, like, what kind of problems does this present in treating, delusions, if you can go onto the internet and validate whatever
Yeah.
thought which also has echoes in our
Right.
political climate, which
Yeah,
is,
like you wake up one day and say, you know what? What if the Earth is actually flat and they've been lying to us ever since
you can
Columbus? And then you
find
go find
validate
David
that.
Icke. Yeah.
Yeah, name your reality. We can render it, as long as you keep looking at this screen. You can,
Yeah.
and so it's, and I mean, look at
It's
how
like
our,
looking up a misspelled word and you find a million other people misspelling the word the same way, so you figure it must be spelled correctly.
yeah, and I mean,
Well,
this is why,
Google's got the did you mean now, but
I mean, everything is getting balkanized and segmented because of this.
yeah.
Everything from our political our political apparatus to the entertainment system, the entertainment industry is getting increasingly segmented. A friend of mine went in to pitch a show at, Netflix, and he's like, it was an animated show, and he's like, yeah, so I have this really great idea. It's like, it's a kid show, but it's also a show, parents can watch. And, like, she just stopped him, and she was like, oh, we don't do segmented viewing, or no, co-viewing. We don't do co-viewing. The kids watching it on the iPad, and the parents never even watch it. And he
Hmm.
was just like, co-viewing. That's like a concept. We don't do co-viewing like that.
Narrow
Right.
casting only. There's a
This is a
movie
guy
for the
who's like,
daughter, a movie for the son, a movie for the
yeah,
father, a movie for the mother.
simultaneously,
Wow.
on each device.
Well, it's
Um,
true though. I mean, I walk around and see everybody on their phones. Teaching yoga, I see people on their phones. I just before we get too far forward off away from something that you mentioned earlier, there was this guy, not a particularly nice person, but I was Uber driving, and it wasn't you. Actually, that's how we met. Since just for
yeah.
an amusing anecdote. But anyway, it was a different guy in Santa Monica, and I said that I was a yoga teacher, and he said, every girl I've ever gone out with, well, he was saying every girl I've ever met who was into yoga was chemically imbalanced. And he said, and it was, they would always say, oh, I have to go do my yoga. I don't feel right. I have to do my yoga. And it's an
Okay.
interesting point, because how do we deal with an internet that will confirm any paranoid idea, or like the WebMD or anything like that for people who are hypochondriacs is just unplug. You got to look at your posture and look at your posture when you're sitting there looking at your phone, and put down the phone and focus on the posture and the breathing instead. That's what you got to do. That's why I'm teaching yoga. I'm like, trying to get the word out here to the Esoterinerd. So anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an emerging youth culture, counterculture of Ludditism
Mm,
within our lifetime, like
yeah.
probably in the 10 years, where
Well, once they get rid of the phones and it's all contact lenses, then people can do yoga while they surf the internet.
but I think kids are going to reach a point where they're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
No, Facebook is a thing
Yeah.
our parents have. you know?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, because it'll be so expensive. I mean, we know it. We know how expensive it is to have a car and registration and insurance, and then a computer and Netflix and Hulu and all this other stuff, and then a phone with unlimited. It's just every time you turn around, they're charging you for something that doesn't need to be charged for. That really,
Yes.
it could just be
Yeah, I mean,
standard
and
with
I
being
just think of
alive.
I just think of Crowley, like honestly, because Crowley, to me, Crowley seemed to be like the beginning of individualism in like a
Yeah.
modern philosophical sense. And like the everything that happened in the 60s with the revolution, the sexual revolution, psychedelic revolution, all this
Yeah, he definitely
stuff.
his message resonated when
Yeah, and that sense of individualism is what like America is just fucking high on. We are so high on individualism. Like that's our thing,
yeah,
and we're making everything. We are the people that are manufacturing ideology. Like that is our export.
generating illusions. Yeah.
We manufacture ideology, and we manufacture this ideology of individualism, which I'm not going to comment on now because that's a whole other thing.
Hmm.
But my point is, like, this is like I see Crowley as the start of like literally all of this. Like this is like the same way that the phone and segmented entertainment realities and stuff um, are everyone is trying to segment and individualize every aspect of their user experience. Their entire life is becoming a user experience,
Hmm.
which is so I don't know. These patterns are interesting.
It's kind of cool that everybody's called a user now, because back in the original Tron days, I was the only weirdo calling myself a user.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm part of it. I'm trying to get everybody in a VR visor that
There
um,
was that GIF going around on the news feed of the girl sitting next to the guy on his visor. Did you see that one?
no, I haven't,
She's
but
looking really bored, and he's like, he's got his hand up in the air, and he's looking around with his visor.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna, yep,
Don't forget reality, reality.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where this is. So when we were in Anonymous, I coined there was a phrase. Have you seen Willy Wonka in the
Hmm.
Chocolate Factory? And that part when Willy Wonka they're in like the tunnel
Uh-huh.
and they're on the boat and he's like, "There's no way of knowing which direction we are going. There's no earthly," and like that's I think there's no way of knowing where this boat's going. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Are we going to be living under a global caliphate? With like Muslim robots. I don't know what is going to happen. Like
Yeah.
there's like
Well,
so in
imagining
so
a
many
United
directions.
States with Bernie Sanders as president versus one with Donald Trump as president. It's a kind of a mind blower. I mean, I assume the shadowy puppet masters won't actually, that this is all just entertainment, and
Like
that they're just gonna.
is Mike Judge like a fucking high magician and he's like just creating idiocracy? Like are we living
No,
inside
I
of
think
his
he's
dream?
reading the
Like
signs of the times and just seeing if things, keep going along this path. What is the logical progression?
yeah. Well, it's all fascinating to me, and it's all I don't know. Like I'm happy to be asking the questions I'm asking and doing what I'm doing.
Well, I think that there's going to be a convergence down the road where the world that everybody's going to be living in, like, for example, when they go to work and they sit down in their cubicle and they turn on their virtual reality goggles and they start doing customer service and this horrible world of banner ads, there's going to be an outside, and that's going to be where the work you did with Anonymous meets up with the work you did with virtual reality, and they come together into the sci-fi that I'm writing.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think that no, I don't know. I don't know. There's no fucking way to know. I don't know.
Yeah. I
That's
love
cool.
speculating
That's
though,
exciting.
because then sci-fi just pours out. You can't help it.
What did
Imagine.
I mean? What did William Gibson famously said of Michael Jackson? Uh, it just makes my job harder as a science fiction author. If This is back when like Michael Jackson was the weird thing, the singular weird thing to talk about in pop culture. And now it's like literally like everything. I mean, we just had an AI chatbot became a neo-Nazi sex robot over the course of a day on Twitter.
What?
You didn't hear about this?
No.
This is insane. So Microsoft created a millennial artificial intelligence Twitter account that would tweet to people and engage in conversations contextually and learn things about the people that it was talking to.
Uh-huh.
Look up these tweets. Within one day, she went from, "Hey guys, I can't wait to meet you guys." She's like, "Hey, I can't wait to meet all you. I think humans are so cool." She went from that to like Ricky Gervais, like to like Hitler was right about the Jews,
Oh my
and
God.
demanding that people like, rape her, and she turned into like a Trump-loving neo-Nazi sex robot.
Oh my
within
God.
just based off what people were saying to her.
How
So,
weird. How scary.
well, again, this goes back to, I mean, it's because it's not like that she didn't get there on her own. That's what people were saying to her.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's the stuff that's going to create the first artificial intelligences, it's scary. I mean, hopefully they've learned not to do that. I mean, there was that one guy that made the mistake of having a live Twitter feed next to him while he was standing at a podium in front of 4,000 people and a camera. That only happened once, like, so maybe this will just be a one-time thing, and in the future AI will, be plugged into people who meet a bare minimum standard of I don't know. But then who decides what the standard is for being civilized or being good as opposed to evil or whatever? I mean, that's the whole extreme. America has taken free speech to such an extreme that you have liberals standing there watching the Nazi parade going, "I'm glad to live in a country where people are free to have a Nazi parade." What?
Yeah, I mean, I will defend. I mean, I'm a hardcore free speech activist.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with that.
I think our three-tiered system, or the way we vote and everything is definitely an evolution on the old system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're talking about governing a country that's basically a hemisphere
Yeah.
cross,
A
and
lot of different communities inside of it.
it's riven by historic racial tension.
Yeah.
Has an incredibly opaque judicial, like how our like electoral system even operates with like, money is opaque. I mean, like you're never. I think the duty of government is to get as close as it can to order, and no government's going to do it. And the bigger the bigger this monster is, the harder it is to control.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess Amsterdam and Sweden might be nice. They're also the size of my like hometown.
Right.
So
Yeah. Small cold places seem to do well.
Yeah, they don't have any immigration. Like they don't have any like they don't let anybody in.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to run a tiny rich country than it is an enormous, nation, that is trying to accommodate the needs of such a vast.
I mean,
Yeah.
the old American dream got a new definition post World War II, when just by sitting back and watching the rest of the world shoot itself in the foot repeatedly for years, we ended up being the richest nation in the world. And so everybody got spoiled by that and thought that they could work at McDonald's and pay the mortgage on a white picket fence house. And it turns out that that's got a expiration date on it. That was only going to last 23 years, or however long it lasted.
I mean, I think that we're incredibly fortunate to have what we have, and we don't think about the third world. And I think that we enjoy a standard of living, I think, at the expense of the global community.
Right.
And that if we're going to live together on this planet, I think we've got to think about how that is going to be sustainable as the world shrinks, because people, the population is skyrocketing, and because of communication and technology. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, it's all.
there's a couple factors. I mean, there's of course as the rest of the world builds up, we're going to have to share the economic wealth with the whole world. But as we learn to play together, that'll mean that we'll all be able to share wonderful stuff. But then you have the Koch brothers. You have people siphoning off all this power and energy into a bubble, in an offshore account.
They're all fucking old. That's the thing. Like these people are dying. Like I just want them to die.
Yeah, where
Seriously,
does all the money go when they die, though?
I I just want I just so I'm from Arizona, and Arizona I think is going to go through a sea change politically as the baby boomer generation begins to die. Because Arizona is just let's just consider Arizona a cross section for historically conservative
Hmm.
states.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar. I
Yeah, I mean
spent some
maybe it's
time in
not,
Lake
maybe it
Havasu.
is. Right.
A
So
lot of
like I
blondes.
grew up. I mean, my extended family had incredibly racist. I grew up with around my parent. My family wasn't, but there were people in my family that were like, yeah, we grew up hearing terrible things. Um, so that and there's lots of them because they're the baby boomers. That's what they did. They boomed.
Yeah.
Um, and now they're all old, and there's a bunch of brown children that outnumber them in Arizona that are probably progressive because they don't want to be deported, and they're here to work, and like
Yeah.
the reason, and what's making the people making their life hard are all the old white people. They're
Right.
hanging on to this idea that America is a thing that it never actually has been, or
Yeah.
has been at the expense of many other people. So what happens when all these boomers just over the next 10 years just start to drop like flies, and we're left with all these like Latino kids that are now can vote? Arizona's going to go from red to blue, like at least I hope it
Interesting.
is. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to
That might
happen.
tip the
Like
balance.
I think we're going to see that. I mean, I just wrote a feature film that actually just got into a festival in South Carolina. It's a
Nice.
horror movie, using the zombie genre to talk about just that.
Hmm.
It's about the change in as the millennials take over from the baby boomers, um, and try to move forward in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um,
And Gen X just sits there complaining.
yeah, Gen X was they were born into that, like into the surplus of the
Yeah.
Clinton. They got a skewed sense of safety. Rebellion to them was doing nothing because that's just the way the cultural equation worked out at that time.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't.
Yeah, I just sort of
But
imagine
Gen X
like
also created the internet. So,
yeah, that's true.
well,
Well, I'm technically Gen X. I'm right at the end.
yeah. Yeah, I don't have any problem with whatever. I don't.
I remember playing Atari. That's really the only difference.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine had an Atari. It was
Nice.
it was old. So,
So David Bowie,
yeah, Bowie.
just yeah, you were mentioning about he and what was it? Oblique Strategies?
Yeah, well, that was Brian Eno and another guy whose name escapes me created. So this is in the 70s. I mean, this was sort of an extension of like the Beatles did stuff like this too, where they would like throw tapes up in the air and just let kind of chaos make creative choices for them, and then elaborate on those
Right.
formally, but to kind of inject a sense of chaos and randomness into a process to kind of give it more life. Um,
Yeah, that makes me think
Bowie
of
did that.
D&D.
Yeah, Bowie did that on Diamond Dogs, I believe, where he would cut up magazines and throw them up in the air.
Oh, cool. He was
And
burrowsing pop culture.
totally, yeah, Burrow, yeah, yes, exactly. And if you read the lyrics to a lot of Bowie's stuff, it's kind of nonsense
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So Brian
Or
had a
he's
decade.
speaking as something else, speaking as the robot.
He's a storyteller. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
storyteller. He's either telling a story or That's what I like his storytelling stuff. Diamond Dogs is my favorite album. It's always been my favorite album. And to me, Diamond Dogs is this weird, like carnival freak show hybrid of 1984 and a junkie, like almost like a Burroughs type character, and there's some science fiction stuff in there also. And
Nice.
it's I love that. And outside and and um and Diamond Dogs are kind of spiritually related. And before his death, actually, he was talking about Eno was saying that they should revisit Outside and do a part two to it. I think Bowie thought he had another year left.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he said. He knew his days.
Oh, so when he recorded that second album, it wasn't intended to be an album to come out post-mortem.
No, I think that probably became the way to go at some point.
Yeah, he might have figured that might happen. Like,
Yeah.
now that it's been recorded, release it next year, whether I'm here or not, kind of thing.
I think according to Eno, he wanted to get one more album out. And
Now, there's a book. I recently found a YouTube video, and I want to look that up. There was a book he wrote, and I guess he was reciting passages straight out of the book. So there's like there's illustrations and stuff like that. So Ramon and all these mysterious characters for people like me who've listened to Outside over and over and over and over. And I had my own I had my own whole vision of what was going on, but I guess there's actually a book I can go read now and find out.
That's cool.
What he's talking
about. Outside creeped me out. Like, the baby Grace or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's creepy.
They won't let me see anybody if I want to sometimes, and I ask.
Yeah. She's like all drugged up
popular
and she's
news.
dying. It's really chilling.
Yeah. Oh, but the opening is great where he's naming off all these different random dates: Tuesday, Thursday, March 25th, April 3rd. And then finally it comes in with the music, with the strong music, and he says, "Now, not tomorrow."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. But then I don't know what he's talking about, but it works for me. Yeah.
It's outside. It happens
music
outside.
is happening outside.
He's talking about the world. So this is like on that album, that's like the Greek chorus saying, "In fair Verona where we lay our scene," like he's saying it's happening here. Like this is the world. He's laying out I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Oh, you're right. Oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it happens outside. It's like there's layers, of course, because he's always got layers. I try to aspire to have, at least 3 levels of meaning, but it's like the immediate surface is the song I'm hearing is happening outside right now, like him singing, and it's happening now. And then, but at the same time, what he's going to be talking about. If you're asking, well, where is this? Who is this? It's everyone. It's everywhere. There's a city.
It's everything in the world that he's going to lay out for you.
You can find that old lonely man in any old.
And Diamond Dogs opens the same way with a chorus, and ending the death as the last few corpses lay rotting in the slime.
I'm gonna have to check out that album now. I haven't gotten
the
to that.
shadows lifted in ancient high on budgets and red mutant eyes gaze down, hung no more. Yeah, so Diamond Dogs opens the same way with a story about about it. So I put oblique strategies are actually in my VR experience. They're on a sign.
Oh, cool.
They're on a road sign. And so as you're in this world, this kind of chilling, weird world, the sign is asking you questions, saying then most of them are from Brian Eno's oblique strategies. Some of them are from dreams I've had. One of them is Teeth in the Dark. It says Teeth in the Dark. And it's from a night terror I had when I was I'm a very lucid, vivid dreamer all my life. I've been that way.
Nice.
But when I was a child, we were. This is one of my only memories. Like as a baby. I was like a little tiny kid, barely like languagey, and we were going camping. And I have this memory. I have lots of really good memories from when I was a kid too, but this is a weird one. So, and I had a night terror, a straight up night terror. We're in the woods. So my parents, at this point, they must be like 30, 31. They're young. They're like young parents, and they're in the middle of the woods, and their kids just screaming like a night terror, not waking up.
Yeah,
it's fucking horror. They're in the fucking like this is like a Sam Raimi movie, and I wake up and all I say is teeth in the dark. There's teeth in the dark. and that's what I remember. I just remember seeing teeth in the dark, and that's like so. It's like such a vivid thing. So I put teeth in the dark on the sign as well. That's not from Brian Eno, but it's from a dream that I had. Um, um,
I had.
I've had. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say. It reminds me of a dream I had when I was a teenager, and I don't remember exactly what the words were, but it was in French, and it was graffiti on the wall, and it said, "To live without passion is not to live."
And this was in your dream?
Yeah,
Okay,
and I
super cool.
took that with me.
So, all right, here's a question for you. I remember in psychology classes being told by psychology PhDs, people that knew these things, that you should not be able to read in your dreams. That the
Oh,
part,
I think that's BS. Yeah, whenever anybody says there's no this or that in my dream, I go dream it just to prove them wrong, you know?
okay, all right, no, and I'm not saying I'm not trying to
Oh
like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
I
what I'm
maybe that's
but
too general,
but
but yeah.
there is some. I mean, these people aren't just pulling this out of their ass. These are fucking scientists. I mean,
I guess. But
so
yeah,
what?
no, go on. What were you
So
saying?
like, so what is? So yeah, I want to talk about dreams for a second.
Yeah.
So what is that? What is wired differently in our brains that when we dream, I can read things, I can hear music, I can dream, I can come back from a dream with a music with a tune in my head.
Well,
Like
here's one thing that when I was young, what was told to me was that words won't stay. Like if you look at them, like if you see a word like the word cat in a dream, while you're looking at it, it may stay. It might even change while you're looking at it, but if you look away for a couple seconds and then look back, pretty much guarantee it'll change.
that's exactly what
That's how
happens
I
to the sign.
test.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens to the sign in my VR dream.
Oh,
Exactly that.
cool. Cool.
When you look away and you look back, the words have changed.
Yeah. Nice. I'd look at my watch and I'd look away and then I'd look back and there'd be a cue in it, in the time. And I'd be like, oh, what am I doing? If I was sitting in a classroom, that'd be where I'd stand up and dive through the window and go flying.
Yeah.
So hopefully my watch will never malfunction.
Um, I've had a for years I had a recurring dream. This is a weird one.
Hmm.
Uh, being on an empty space station, like an empty. I'd love to hear your take on this, by the way.
Hmm.
So, an empty space station that's like feels like it's like a Ridley Scott, like kind of like worn, lived in, not technologically super advanced, like an oil rig. It'd be like an oil rig in space, but really vast and big, and and
Like a
cavernous.
a guild. Uh, are you into Dune? One of
Yeah, oh, no, we could talk about Dune for a
yeah,
long.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
What
super.
the guild
It's
highliner?
it's more like a parking garage or like or like a
Right.
hangar, like
Yeah.
industrial
Ha-
and
Like in the prequels.
uh,
Well,
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So and I'm walking around. It's empty, and I always end up in the crew's locker room. It's completely empty, and looking at old things that used to belong to people. Or sometimes there's memories of like Stephen King talks about having like a place where you store your memories in your
Yeah,
dreams.
Memory Palace.
Yeah, or there's memories of mine that are there as objects. And I always have this incredible sense of belonging and safety in this derelict, empty space station.
Mm.
And the sense of belonging and safety is very profound and real. Like we're talking like ecstasy profound and real. Like if I'm on MDMA or something. Like it's
Yeah.
this very real sense of being at home. And a lot of times I'll be having if I'm having a nightmare or experiencing anxiety, I'm running from something, I'll turn a corner and I'll find myself in this locker room or in this space station, and like I've just entirely turned around my dream and I'm in this like safe place. And I had this dream for like 5 years. Like, what do you think? What I mean, is it possible I'm actually on a space station and that's my reality? Like I'm
Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind. The first of which is that, and I mean, I'm just citing this experience, and then I'm going to draw it right back. When I was young, and I would listen to Space Oddity, I didn't know what heroin was. I didn't know there was a double meaning. I didn't even know that he wrote it the year we went to the moon. So there was, I know now there's a lot packed into that song. But
Yeah.
at the time that I first would listen to it, and my mom would kind of reference the feeling that he was evoking in the song. That's what came to mind when you told me that's your tin can,
Yeah.
like a very kind of like a 4-year-old listening to that and not associating it with addiction or anything. So that was that was layer one. Layer two, there's a great sci-fi called Judas Unchained. That's the sequel to Pandora's Star, and there's a character who's created his home inside a hollowed out asteroid, and that's a cool one. But anyway, so yeah, in the system, as you know from episode 35, there's the temple in Malkut, and as you know from episode 45, there's the Path of Tav. It almost sounds like you've got a temple in the Path of Tav.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That's interesting.
Or even a temple in Malkut that outlasts the earth. Like maybe for some people it's the past. Maybe it's being in Ireland before whatever, and for other people it's being in a castle or a church, and for other people
Yeah.
it's maybe a space station. I mean, why not? It's Malkut.
Right.
It's the
It's
physical
it's
world.
it's so all right. Here's a question about the tree of life.
Or maybe the future. Maybe you've projected farther in the future than the space station, and maybe you're tapping into a future life, or even a past life if we're jumping around non-linearly from life to life.
Yeah, it sounds like I need to write a film about it.
Oh yeah, there's at least
Yeah.
5 different.
It's
films
because like that.
right
That's,
with it.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. It's. I mean, I don't know, but the feeling of belonging is what is so
Yeah.
odd about it.
I'd like to
That's
see a
what- that's
virtual
what makes-
reality of
that's
that.
what makes- it's not the recurringness because it's the feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that I don't actually experience in my waking life.
Yeah.
Is what's weird about it.
That's a trip.
Yeah, it really is a trip. What about this? Have you ever have you ever actually tripped in a dream? Like I've had dreams where I'll take acid or mushrooms in my dream,
Yeah.
and I will experience sensations and visions like I'm actually hallucinating.
And I mean, on the number 7 chromosome, there's 3 enzymes clearly written out who have very specific jobs, which are to create dimethyltryptamine in the brain. And I've had dreams where I smoke weed and wake up with cotton mouth, and a little bit high. So, and I know our brains also produce THC. So, I mean, it's just, to me, it sounds like the brain in a dream. There's those extreme cases like people get hypnotized and you put a cold quarter on them and say this is boiling hot, and then they end up with blisters. So it stands to reason that if that happens, that smoking pot in a dream, the brain will just say, oh, okay, let's make a bunch of THC and release it.
Because that's what trips me out about drugs. It's a fun pun. You're not tripping on the drugs. You're tripping on your own
reaction
the
to
stuff
drugs.
that's already in your brain.
Yeah, the dopamine that the drugs are triggering. Yeah.
We have all these experiences locked away in our brains.
If we knew how to use our brain, if we had the full owner's manual and not just the.
If we have to root our brains.
Yeah.
We have to
defrag.
jailbreak our brains.
Yeah. Yesterday when it was yesterday I was teaching a class and I was saying, okay, it's Friday night, so when I was using the example, how sometimes your computer gets a little slow, you've got too many things running and you kind of have to turn the whole thing off for count to 11 or whatever and restart it. Well, that's what I'm going to do. So if we do it right, that's, when this hour's over, you're going to feel like you've just reset your computer and you're ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention, just because we're kind of on the subject again before we got too far in a different direction, I alluded to a dream that I had with Merrick Hamer. I didn't dream with Merrick Hamer. I was talking to Merrick Hamer in a previous episode. He's he's down at the Fauché Lodge in Culver City, and I mentioned going to a planet that was created by the collective will of the Sea Org, and he was like, that's really weird. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll change subjects now, but this might be a good time to go a little more in depth with that one.
Yeah.
So I was battling demons, and mind you, my whole life I've used that method, looking at a word, looking away, look back at the word. If it's changed, it's a dream. And so I've never, ever, ever had it happen where I looked at the word, looked away, and looked back, and it was the same word, and it was a dream. Until one day when it was the first time I was high-risk So that dates it. It must have been 2001-ish or 2000-ish, and late 2000, I don't know, something like that. And so there were just one thing after another, and I was learning to battle with positive energy and divine names rather than lowering down to the level of whatever the critter was on. If something wanted to fight with punching, or something wanted to fight with insulting and being angry, then I'd elevate above that and just blast them with divine light and love, and kind of learning the subtlety of that kind of battle. And then so it felt like, you know, a video game where each boss was bigger than the previous, until finally I found myself on this planet. And it was a small planet. You could see the curvature of it real sharply. So it was like clearly smaller than the moon, like a real small thing. And the thing about it was the street signs stayed the same, to the point where I could look at a directory map and go, I walked that way, made a left, and turned right on that street. And the street names were still there. I'd look back, and they were the same. And wow. I was like, what the fuck? I have never been to a place like this. And so there were like houses and stuff like that. So I went to the main building, because there was a very clear main building up, kind of like, you know, Tibet style, that was elevated. And I went inside, and now I don't know if my subconscious is like oddly racist or whatever, but I'm just going to tell you because it's the way it was. There were a lot of Asian people in suits, like they were in a ballroom. And I got the feeling that in reality, they were in a basement on computers. But in this world, they were here. And they were dancing. I don't know what the heck that means. It was just something that, as I was walking by them, it was like I was walking down a hall, and I looked to my left and saw them all in the ballroom, and I was like, oh, those are the people on the computers. And then I kept walking, and I mean,
it could have been a StarCraft cafe in Korea.
Maybe. But I ended up being directed to speak to an older woman who was in a position of authority, and she basically asked me what I was doing there. And it was the same kind of thing where she was like, are you a Scientologist? Are you an ex-Scientologist? How did you get here? And I was like, honestly, I was on another level fighting demons. I'm from the Golden Dawn. I ended up here. I don't know. Somebody tricked me. I took a wrong turn. And she told me, I mean, by the end of the dream, I felt like I had agreed never to tell anyone about the experience, but I hadn't, you know? Like when I really thought about it, I was like, I didn't take any such oath. But she told me that they were basically, she was like, we're going to let you go, but on one condition: you must never tell anyone of this place, you know? And so it was like, by virtue of the fact that I woke up afterward, I thought that I had agreed to this deal and I was bound to it. And, but the odd thing was that at the point where she said, we're going to send you back home now, I'm like, can't I just wake up? And she's like, no, it's not that simple. And it was very, very vivid, very, very lucid. I was kind of trying to wake up. And then I went outside, and it was the fucking Delta Flyer from Star Trek Next Generation. And like literally, and I was looking at it and touching it and everything, like, so this is what the Delta Flyer feels like. And then I got in, and I was like, oh, very nice furniture. And it closed, and I was looking out the window, and it lifted up off of this little planetoid, and I was looking out the front, and it was the Enterprise, the Enterprise C or whatever from, you know, Next Generation, and it docked, and there was a hissing sound. The door started to open, and I woke up in my fucking bed, and that was my experience.
Yeah, that's
what
crazy.
The fuck was that? But there was one point on my way while I was waiting for the meeting with the important lady who was going to tell me that I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, and I was kind of drilling her for information, and there was a big computer, and I knew that the computer was the heart of the operation, and it was through the collective will and visualization of a bunch of people, but it was very, very complex. I mean, now I have an idea that if I memorize the tech dictionary and absorb it and digest it, that will be the shape of the computer I was looking at. But at the time, I was looking at all the different mechanisms and dials and gauges and trying to memorize it in hopes that maybe I'd be able to wake up and draw it. But of course,
bring something back, bring a jewel back with you.
Yeah. I brought the general experience back, but not the specifics that looked like. Yeah,
that sense of trying to bring something back is always it bothers me when I have a really lucid dream.
Me too.
That I can't. I want to bring it back with me into reality.
That was that was the good thing about, I mean, that was the best part of Freddy Krueger, Elm Street, was when she had the glove in her hand and all that shit.
So cool. Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, and like that's why I'm making movies. That's why I'm doing things the way I do, is because I love the fact that I can, some of the things I've done are literally dreams I've had. And like, I love that I can like literally take somebody into my brain. Not literally. I understand what that word means.
Basically,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's metaphorically, not the opposite of literally.
Well, the jury's still out on that one as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got an image of you that they say is above and behind my right ear. And when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to someone who sounds like you, who has an image of your face and an approximation of your personality and history based on what little I know, and it's one little subroutine going on above and behind my right ear. Meanwhile, connected to facial recognition software that takes up like a substantial chunk of part of our brain. So it's kind of amazing that computers have gotten to that point where it's just as good as we are. I don't know where I
Yeah.
was going with that. If there was an end to that rant, I don't
I've
know.
got one more. I've got another dream question for
Oh
you
yeah, yeah.
as an esoteric, magical, someone from that whole world of thinking. I haven't so two other experiences that I've heard described as maybe I had a seizure, like a little seizure. Let me know what. So I had a dream experience right as I was waking up. This feeling that my brain is I can't, not my brain, my sense of reality, my consciousness is being stretched. That's just the only way I can describe it, is my whole sense of self in the world around me. But I'm dreaming, so what I don't even know what that means, is literally being stretched and pulled tight like a slingshot. And it gets to a point where it can't go any further or it'll snap. And at that point, whatever is pulling my consciousness back into this incredible line of tension releases. And in this same weird sense of time and space that's kind of figurative, my consciousness, like elastic, snaps back into its normal shape, whatever the fuck that means, flying through this imaginary space-time and hits reality the moment of now. And I wake up like an explosion has gone off in my head. Lights, fizzy stuff, static, and I'm just awake like that.
Hmm.
What the fuck? It happened like twice. Like, this is like, I think I was a teenager. Really memorable though. You don't forget something like that. What
Yeah.
the fuck do you think that could be?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm certainly
Yeah,
not
of course. Yeah, I
a
mean,
professional dream interpreter, but the thing it reminds me of was an experience my mom had, which was one of her most powerful, vivid astral experiences, where she went outside of the universe and she saw time space as a little purple ribbon floating in the void, and it had a beginning and end. And then she went back into it, and she's kind of it was one of those things, she was always trying to get back there, because for that, while she was there, it made sense and she was outside of time. And but the difference is that you were the ribbon in yours.
yeah, yes, yeah. But in both
So I guess
cases,
there's hope in that you can get outside of it.
in both cases, there's a displacement of self. This
Yeah,
idea of
that's
looking
true.
or perceiving the world and the self from a external, to use the Scientology term,
Right.
uh, from an external, POV.
At a certain
Um,
point, the individual self just starts to seem like a practical, convention, like having an avatar so that you can have a conversation, or having something to keep your body, specific body, alive and make sure that it's
so
fed.
this like phenomenon I experienced happened in that period between consciousness and sleep, between REM and waking consciousness.
Hmm.
There's the shadow people, um, sleep paralysis phenomenon as well happens in that kind of sweet spot between sleep and wake.
Yeah.
And there was a study done. If I really recommend making your homepage phys.org, FYS.org, if you're looking for a good homepage.
Okay.
Physics.org. It's whatever's happening in the world of science, put in lame terms you can read, but then the people that comment on it are like fucking scientists from those like you can just educate yourself by reading the comments. Because
Nice.
anyway, there was an article, a study done where they were able to successfully simulate the displacement of self to make you think there's somebody else in the room. And they did this by moving shapes in and out of your field of view while you were in sort of REM sleep. So there is a deterministic, like there is a piece that can be mapped scientifically as to like why we can like think about ourselves in these external weird terms when we're sort of sleeping. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was a cool study. But it all has to do with when you're between the sleep and the between period.
It makes me wonder about certain memories of, where you're kind of thinking, but not in self, and I wonder sometimes if I remember before I was born, because I do have these odd memories of not being, of being vividly there, but not having this idea of a body or a separate self. But I mean, that might just be some kind of dream state that I
Yeah.
had after I was born, but I mean, I imagine that maybe that's what it was before I was born.
There's a book, if you're ever looking to read a book, I know people have really huge, long reading lists. There's a book called Kochik Latayev, which is a Russian modernist novel by fucking, what's his name? I'm trying to find it. I don't see it. It means little, Latayev is a name, and Kochik is like child. And it's about the way a child perceives self in the world, starting at inception or like in utero, the in utero
Yeah.
self. And so it starts out just in descriptions of color and form and maybe sensation. And then the language becomes more sophisticated and articulate as language develops in the kid. So he's perceiving the face of the mother. It's exactly what it's the same phenomenon you're describing.
Yeah.
And it's Russian. I mean,
Or
it's in
the
English, I guess.
racist Twitter feed or whatever it is the consciousness is coming to experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but as the brain collects more information, its ability to perceive the self is more refined and resolved, almost like a render engine, like a render
Yeah.
engine.
I know.
You know,
Gosh, yeah, yeah. What a trip. It's
yeah,
like you start out, well, I'm like my parents, and then later I'm not like my parents, and then in the end you're like, well, I guess I'm sort of like my parents, but different. There's a
yeah,
whole process we all go through.
um, yeah. It's fascinating stuff.
So I wanted to run an idea by you real quick because it's part of the whole sci-fi thing I keep making reference to, where virtual reality and Anonymous come together eventually into these a multitude of free worlds, what's called free worlds, in this particular timeline, in which there was a Henry the Ninth, for example. Um, well, what ends up coming out of it is that, it's kind of on the level of the Matrix as far as the realism of it, and the interface with the brain being very solid. So there's an island you go to, and in this place called the Coffee House that ends up being the interdimensional coffee house and has doors open to all dimensions. But barring that sort of supernatural element, it could be done probably in the relatively near future as an interface between virtual worlds,
For sure. Yeah.
where you have like a malachite floor on an island, and there's tables and chairs, people talking. And then in the middle, there's a pyramid, and the pyramid's mirrored, and there, maybe there's a night sky overhead and then ocean in the distance, and maybe other islands that are the same. And each door leads to a different virtual world that someone has created. Just to give a plug about that, if you go to edward-reap.com/coffeehouse podcast, or for those who are a little more hardcore, you can throw a .xml at the end.
Yeah.
And that'll bring you to my sci-fi radio show about the coffee house. And it kind of dips in and out of
Cool.
the Gwydion podcast for the
Yeah.
backstory.
Whenever I'm doing these VFX jobs, I'm always looking for things to listen to distract my
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah. And then down the road, I'd love to collaborate on making that coffee house a visual reality, or an experience, or maybe even an actual place where people can meet and talk. I when I was a kid, I made this thing called the Neurophone. I didn't make it, of course. I made
Yeah.
I called it. It wasn't an original idea. I was drawing from Brainstorm. You remember that movie
Yeah.
from the 70s? And I
I
was
don't think
imagining,
so.
what if you did it as a phone, where you put something on your head, and someone on in New York or wherever puts something on their head, and then you're both sitting on the Great Wall of China having a conversation, or wherever you want to go, the moon.
Yeah, that's actually really funny. I was just talking with a colleague of mine about exactly that idea with
Yeah,
VR. Yeah,
nice.
exactly that idea.
I look forward to
So,
seeing it. I'm sure you'll be right at the forefront of that.
well, my angle on this whole thing is I'm a filmmaker.
Hmm.
I'm not interactive. I am just doing linear narrative experiences. At some point, someone might hire me to write interactive stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
Um, but I am unfortunately constrained by the arrow of time when it
yeah.
comes to my
Aren't
art.
we all? Yeah,
I am not, well, no, I mean, like coders, like game designers, certainly they can make that. I'm a filmmaker. So which is like kind of like cool because I feel like the competition's not as heavy in that realm as far as VR right now goes, because everyone's going for interactive stuff, as they should, because it's fucking fascinating. But I want to see what I can do with that arrow of time,
yeah,
beginning, middle, end. I still believe I can make interesting things like that. Um, but what you're describing sounds really provocative and really interesting. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm like super, super busy, but I'm sure we'll stay in touch and talk, bounce ideas.
yeah. No, I look forward to seeing what you're up to in a few months and down the road. So
Yeah, I'm too. I'm gonna. I think when we met, actually, I had just shot this project, which is I'm pretty sure is gonna get into some big festivals, called Dorothy, which is it's a David Lynchy type thing about an actress who has a nervous breakdown doing a viral video stunt where she's Dorothy and actually becomes Dorothy, the
mm,
character, literally becomes her on Venice Beach and goes insane because she's in 2016
yeah,
as the character Dorothy. Um,
it's worse than Oz.
it's yes, exactly. So that's out to festivals right now, and that it's starring Megan Rosati. She's a web person. She's a web thing, but like that, man, it's just all happening so fast. Like I hope it. Maybe I don't want to jinx it,
Yeah, no, that's
but
great. That's exciting.
yeah, I'd love to see you. I'd love to hear you. I want you to experience Dreamtime because I think I love to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
It's like really psychedelic
Well, let's
and
meet down at
interesting.
Cafe de Leche maybe tomorrow, and
Yeah, well, tomorrow I'm rendering.
oh, okay.
I'm launching Monday.
Oh, okay. So later in the week.
Yeah, I'm launching Monday, and I don't know what the future is. Well, that's cool. That's a cool place to be.
Yeah.
And
Now, what's the URL of your website that has your demo reel and
so
all that?
yeah, it's www.wjsims.com is me, and that's got everything I've done on there pretty much.
Cool.
All my everything I've directed and everything I've VFXed and some failed things. My anonymous stuff isn't on there. I'm coming. So this is actually the first time I've talked about anonymous in a as Jonathan Sims. Like I've never. You're getting the first of it.
Nice.
um,
Nice.
yeah, I'm gonna be in a documentary next year, and I'm not sure if they're including my stuff with anonymous in that. Um, they very well might. So I'm putting myself out there. I'm coming out of the closet as an anonymous person. Um,
Nice.
I figure 6 years after the fact makes me not a sellout, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
over.
Well, like you said, the Anonymous is kind of different than it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's a whole
but
different.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of people wearing Guy Fawkes masks and pointing cameras at themselves. But what I saw was awesome, and I mean it just spoke right on point. It was just every word was pointed
It
in
was
the right
it was fun.
direction. It was
It
good.
was fun. It was those were fun times. weird times. And I'm glad I can talk about it now because
Yeah.
I've like it was such a good experience for me and a fun experience that I didn't want to sell out. I didn't want to like I
Because
didn't want to
that
do what I
has a
saw
kind of
every.
purity.
Yeah, there was like I didn't even use that YouTube account Volsupa.
Hmm.
I don't even know the password to it anymore. I got drunk because I was paranoid about we were being pursued by other anonymous factions that were mad at us for we were called moral fags.
Hmm.
Moral fags were the people that were doing the Scientology stuff because there was all kind of factions anonymous that do evil bad stuff, and then the people do good stuff and like they don't like each other.
Mm.
We were like in the middle, but as somebody that made a successful video, there were elements in the underground that were unhappy with what we were doing, and I got paranoid one night and I was wasted and I don't have the password to that email
Yeah.
account, to that YouTube account anymore. That Volsupa name I never even used that name in any of my that was a misspelling of Voluspa, which is the first book of the Poetic Edda of Norse mythology.
Mm.
Yeah, I was, but my point is I was just disconnected from we would do stuff and they wouldn't know it was us in the community.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was pure. Yeah, it felt like therapy, like doing something cool, watching it take off, and not having any credit, not and then fast forward to 6 years later, I don't have representation. No one's buying my screenplays. I'm not, I'm kind of like, what would have happened if I would have sold out then? But I didn't, and now things are working for me off, and life's a weird journey. It's a
Yeah.
weird, it's a weird thing, and that's good. I like that it's weird.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a great, enlightening conversation. Thanks for your take on some of my dreams and stuff. And
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing who else you have come up on here.
Sounds good.
And
Yeah, we're going to have a guy named Golden Stash who is remaining anonymous, but I know his name. Um, but I can tell you off the air. But anyway, he does graffiti art in Boston with an esoteric theme. It's a master mason from the 1970s that has a metallic gold mustache.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
he's going to be on.
cool. Great. That sounds like lots of fun.
Yeah, apparently
Well,
he's a big fan of the show, so that's cool.
yeah, that's awesome. Hey, you're actually friends with one of my friends, Chris Donham is do you know him?
Yeah,
We have a mutual friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll have to look that up. Let me see.
He's like an old friend of mine. Like we lived together. He actually lived with me when I was doing Anonymous.
Let me see. 28 mutuals. Oh, through the Hive.
Through the Hive.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I used to
So
make the Gwydion videos are all mine on the Hive YouTube page.
no way. So we actually probably at some point. Did you used to go to those parties at the Hive?
Yeah, I didn't make it to the Saturday ones because I had a neophyte standing, every first Saturday. But I would go to Art Walk, so I was the Art Walk guy. So I made the
So
Gwydion's Art Walk
Chris
videos.
was living at the Hive at the time, and I was there in some of the storage spaces up above it. And
Yeah.
this is 2006, I think.
Okay.
And I was a part. I mean, I was around a lot, so there's a chance we.
So you remember Travis in the back?
Yeah. Yes. Travis Morley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might remember Stephanie was hanging around.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it's a small world, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense because yeah, the Hive people are all kind of there's a lot of overlap between the communities that I find myself.
Yeah. You know what I realized? The one thing we didn't talk about in my evolution was I was a Randian for 4 or 5 months before I came out of the
Now, what
closet.
is a Randian?
And Ayn Rand. I was into like objectivism for
Oh,
5 months.
Randian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when I was living with Chris,
Yeah.
I turned this huge asshole because I had to I apologized to everybody afterwards for my Ayn Rand phase. It was funny, but
Well, I'm one of those guys that doesn't like Ayn Rand but hasn't read Ayn Rand, and so I can't argue with anybody because they say, "Well, have you read it? Well, then shut up."
well, so I was I was closet. I came out of the closet super late. Like I was like 27.
Hmm.
And I'm bisexual, so it's really easy. Bisexuality is the last closet. It's
Hmm.
really easy to stay in the closet because you can hang, you know, you
Yeah.
can have girlfriends. Like lying, like I really like girls. So it took it was hard for me to come out. And it took reading Ayn Rand, which has taught me to be a completely selfish asshole and hate and just not care about the rest of the world. That's what let me, you know, come out of the closet. And then once I did it, I realized I didn't need that selfishness. Like that was like, I don't, this is actually bullshit. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
But Chris and I were together, not like physically, but like we were living together at the time, and I think I was a jerk. I think I wrote him a letter like, dude, I'm really sorry about
Yeah.
like all that like Ayn Rand shit I did. Like I was confused. Like,
Yeah, 2006 and 7 and 8 and 9 were all kind of but yeah, particularly 2006 and 7 I was going through some rough times myself.
cool. Well, that's funny. Well, hey, thanks for having me on the podcast and the chat and everything. And
Yeah. Hey, do you remember a guy with like a black fedora that used to hang around in late 2006?
I don't think so. I mean,
Big red nose. That was
there
me.
were yeah. I mean, there were people. I mean, that was like there. Everyone was in costumes. Like it was
Yeah.
madness.
That was
Yeah.
my first costume before. Well, the hat got stolen. Then someone, a friend of mine, bought me the red hat. So now
Yeah.
Gwydion wears a red hat.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to listen to your other podcasts.
Yeah, I'll send you some links too.
Sweet, man. Well, I'm gonna go render some stuff.
All right. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, Jonathan, for coming on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. And to quote the famous Star Wars politician, I'll be watching your career with great interest. Thank you to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofuku-in Temple on Mount Koyasan for the music you're hearing right now. Thank you to Tangerine Dream. And most importantly, thank you to you, the Esoterinerd, wearing a Guy Fawkes mask, listening to this podcast. And so, if you would close your eyes, bow your heads, and bring your hands together to your heart chakra, as we say, we are anonymous, we are legion, we do not forgive, we do not forget. Expect us. Good night.